you unmute Catherine McKenna? Okay. You have people in the waiting room or no?
It won't until right now. They're just getting everything. Just give your 2 minutes.
Okay, folks, we're gonna get going in about 2 minutes here. Just give us 2 minutes to get set up. Just waiting a couple things to fall into place. Time to grab your coffee or whatever you want, beverage you want to grab right now, and we'll get started in 2 minutes.
Oops. Hello, sorry, we're just having.
Oh, you're there, but I think you froze up.
I can see you. Hello.
Now you're there and
Hello,
unfrozen.
Minister, how are you?
Good. I could see you, and I was like, hello, hello, hello.
You can see that we're live. We're just give everybody about a 1 minute warning here to get started. So
All right, thanks, Mike. Hi, Ron.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you.
before signing in, we'll give it about another 45 seconds and we'll get started. Guess so. I like the canoe in the background there. That's nice.
I know, it's an Algonquin canoe. It's birch bark, was used in the Ottawa River.
Oh, very cool. The weather been good for canoeing out east? Because just too nice out here.
I know, I heard it was crappy. I was doing a call at one point last week and it was cold.
Yeah.
Was it cold?
It's better now. Hey, Ron, summer's here?
Summer's here. Well, today's a little cloudy, but for the past several days, it's been gorgeous. So the cloud is just a little bit of a, gives us some shade for a day and then we'll get back at it.
Okay, I think it's time to get started here, folks. Well, people will be joining as we go along because we got a pretty good crowd to start with. So we'll get started. My name, for those of you who don't know, is Mike Hine. I'm the CEO of the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce. So welcome to our town hall with Minister McKenna and our local MP, Ron McKinnon. As you know, the Chamber has been very active during the COVID crisis and been a hub for information for most businesses in the area. We've been managed to get through it as well as possible, and we're here to help and the information, disseminate the information coming out of the federal government and the provincial government, mostly federal government. For a few weeks there, was coming fast and furious, and we were able to get it out in a timely manner and host a number of webinars with a number of different agencies and politicians to help you understand what's going on. And we will continue to do that as we go through the process here and continue to be your advocate and inform you of what's going on federally, provincially, and municipally to help business get through this all, because it's important that we get through this as best we can. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our local MP, Mr. Ron McKinnon, for his greetings. Ron, over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Mike, you've been and continue to be an integral part of our business community, and I want to recognize your valued efforts to advocate on behalf of our small businesses, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. I know I hear from you a lot. So hello, everyone, and welcome. I would first like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of the Coquitlam First Nation, and within the shared traditional territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Squamish, and Stolo nations. So that said, I'm Ron McKinnon, Member of Parliament for Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam. And it's exciting to be here today virtually and a delight to be joined by so many. And it's great to partner with chambers on events of this kind. I know that the COVID-19 crisis has presented many challenges, and it's truly inspiring to see the resilience of individuals, families, businesses, and organizations in the Tri-Cities and all across Canada who are going above and beyond to adapt for the people who count on them. all while taking financial hits to protect their own safety and that of others. So much of our daily lives has changed to accommodate the need for social distancing and public health measures. And throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been no shortage of new challenges presented. One silver lining to the COVID-19 situation, however, is the widespread embrace of telecommunication and the ability to connect virtually. And as a former computer programmer, it's exciting to see these changes come to light, and I firmly believe that this will be better for families, our economy, and our environment. So today we are joined by a very special guest from Ottawa, the Honourable Catherine McKenna, MP for Ottawa Centre, and Minister of Infrastructure and Communities. In her previous role as Minister of Environment and Climate Change, she led the creation of Canada's climate plan and demonstrated that Canada's environment and economy go hand in hand. Now, as Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, she is continuing to shape our country by investing in local initiatives as part of the Investing in Canada plan. These investments in transit, green energy, and social infrastructure will help grow our economy, strengthen the middle class, and improve the quality of life for all Canadians. Minister, I'm happy to welcome you to the Tri-Cities once again, albeit virtually this time. Our community, as I'm sure you're aware, is one of the most vibrant and fastest growing in the Vancouver metro area. And alongside this growth has come greater entrepreneurship and a need to accommodate this increased prosperity. And that's why we need to keep investing in the Tri-Cities, not only for the present, but for our kids and grandkids' futures. So whether it be past investments in the SkyTrain's Evergreen Extension, the new Port Coquitlam Recreation Centre, the widening of Lougheed Highway, or design work for future rail separations on Westwood Street and Pitt River Road, I know our government is ready, willing, and able to support the Tri-Cities. So today we're here to talk about infrastructure in our communities and the tools and supports our government is investing in to make evidence-based decisions that can help us plan a healthier, safer, and more prosperous future for everyone. And with that, I'd like to invite the minister to make her remarks, and we'll pass it back after that to Mike, and who will moderate the discussion. Thank you, Minister, and please go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Ron. Can you guys see me? I don't know. I've managed to lose you guys, but can you see me?
We got you.
You got me. Okay, great. Thanks very much, Mike. And of course, everyone must know Ron. He's a huge advocate for Tri-Cities in Ottawa, and you know, he's talked about many of the infrastructure projects, but really he's worked extremely hard to represent your interests. We often have conversations in Ottawa about more we can do. So obviously, first of all, I'd like to be there in person, and I'm looking for the time when I can actually get there. I hear your weather's improved too, so that's good. Last week I was talking to folks and it wasn't quite as nice, but anyway, great to be able to use modern technology here. I thought I would talk kind of briefly about our thoughts about infrastructure, how we've adapted it in the face of COVID-19, where I think we can go in the future to help your community achieve its goals by Canadians. And then of course I want to hear from you. So it's interesting, my title is not just Minister of Infrastructure, it's Minister of Communities. And I think that's something that has really resonated. I didn't know what it meant really until COVID-19 hit, and then really understood how much our local community matters. Whether it's the amazing businesses that we have and that you have in your community, whether it's the infrastructure that gets people to and from work and their businesses, or the natural spaces that we're all very excited at getting out to because we're, you know, quite limited in what we can do, really actually makes a huge difference. So often we think of just bridges and roads with infrastructure, but it's so much more. It relates to how do we create jobs, how do we build prosperous communities, how do we improve the quality of life, of course also how do we tackle climate change and build a cleaner future. So you might be wondering, what have I been doing this pandemic? I mean, obviously our government has been really focused on how do we support everyone through the immediate pandemic and the economic crisis. And I know you know, but I'm not going to list all the programs, but we've been working really hard on that. But in terms of the infrastructure plan, I've been focused on how do we get as many projects approved as quickly as possible. That's the best way, I think, from my portfolio, we can contribute immediately to creating jobs. What I like to think of our plan, it's a build-up approach. So building thousands of projects, creating jobs across the country. And the quantum is actually extremely large. It's a $180 billion infrastructure program over 12 years. We have 20 federal departments, and we've already delivered $68 billion in investments across the country. So we haven't stopped during the pandemic. In fact, we've doubled down on getting these projects going, local projects. And in terms of my portfolio, it's everything from clean water, better transportation, broadband. Everyone needs high-speed broadband as quickly as possible, more efficient buildings, renewable energy, public transit, active transportation. That's everything, bus shelters, pedestrian crossings, expanded walking and cycling routes. And these all create jobs. They also improve the quality of life. There's huge environmental benefits. And they also create communities where people want to live, like your community. So I know I will mention the projects because I think it's good just to be reminded of some of the projects. The Newport Coquitlam Recreation Center, the Plateau Water Pump Project, the Rapid Transit Fleet Expansion, Highway 7 corridor widening, which was just approved for more than $29 million in federal funding. These are some of the examples, and these are examples that improve your community and make a real difference in the lives of people. And my focus has been really trying to reach out to as many communities. I work very closely with provinces. Much of our spending is through bilateral agreements with provinces, which means that for everyone who's listening here, for the projects that you want, it is very important that they are prioritized by the province and then then sent to the federal government, because our view has been that it's local decision making that's critically important. We don't want to be micromanaging what investments are made, but that does mean that the relationship with the province is critically important, because if a project doesn't, through our bilateral program, doesn't go through the province, it doesn't hit my desk. So I can't approve it. So just emphasizing that, but you do have Ron, who's a great advocate, and we certainly work really closely with the municipalities. I should say, if you haven't seen breaking news, we just finalized the Safe Restart Agreement. It is, I think it was $19 billion, I must say. I am just catching up myself because I've been on calls. And it includes helping municipalities deliver key services. I know it's been extremely challenging for municipalities, and that has been, very hard. And I mean, there's many other aspects about it, including PPE, testing and contact tracing, and many other parts that are really to deal with the immediate pandemic. We also advanced our gas tax fund to help support communities. That meant a cash infusion for Coquitlam, for the Tri-Cities, it was $858,000. Then let me think. I mean, there are other things that we're doing, and I'm happy to discuss this a bit in more detail if people are interested. The Canada Infrastructure Bank, you may have seen that we have a new CEO, a new board chair, Michael Sabia, who was head of the Caisse de dépôt. I think we need to look at how do we crowd in private sector money. The infrastructure needs are very large, and we have historic low interest rates, but we also have the opportunity to crowd in private sector money. So I'm working with him. There will be, stay tuned, an announcement about priority areas and how we're going to be moving forward. And I just would conclude before we go to questions that, look, I think that we have a huge opportunity with infrastructure investments. It is the big driver of GDP with an aging population. It creates good jobs, including local jobs and communities, but it's also a way to get other benefits, from inclusivity to climate change. And so we need to make sure every dollar actually gets these multiple benefits. Maybe I'm a mom, I'm kind of cheap, and I want to make sure that these are taxpayer dollars that we need to be making sure we get the most of. And we need to be working with local communities. And I think there are ways that we can work more closely with local communities. We do a lot through the provinces. We do have some programs directly, and I think that's a huge opportunity too going forward as we look to the future. So that's really it. And now I'm happy. I know you probably have some questions, so happy to answer any questions you folks have.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. If you've got questions, I have some pre-submitted here. But if you have any other questions, put the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Please feel free to ask them in there, and we will try to get to as many questions as we can in the allotted time we have. Following up on your comments about working with the cities, our biggest city here, Coquitlam, has submitted a question, which you may have seen already, but I will read it out just so everybody can read it, and I'll read the one Michelle sent. Sorry, Pete. Michelle went into more detail. I'd like to ask the status of the infrastructure stimulus funding that the minister announced in early May. At the time, it was announced that the federal government was setting aside up to 10% of $33.5 billion Investing in Canada program, which is delivered through agreements with the province and territories. And it's to focus on responding to the pandemic, and it was to cover a variety of projects that would support COVID recovery. BC just released its second intake of Investing in Canada program for the community culture and recreation infrastructure, and does not appear to be related to new federal infrastructure stimulus funding that was announced in May. Can you give an update on the status of that?
Sure. So just to explain that is not new money. So what we've done is we have a $33 billion infrastructure program. Only half of that has been allocated by provinces and territories. And we recognize it can be a challenging fiscal situation. So we said, in the COVID era, this is not stimulus. So I know people are very interested in stimulus. Our focus has been, let's deal with the immediate health and economic pandemic. We can talk about that once we really understand the economic impacts of COVID-19. But the 10% of BC's allocation, the idea would be that the government of BC could decide to use this 10%. It would be a higher percentage that the federal government would put in. It would be for smaller projects, $10 million and under, and it would be projects that could go ahead quickly. But that would be up to BC determining that they want to take advantage of that opportunity. Once again, under the bilateral agreements, it's really the province that works with municipalities to prioritize, and then they bring projects under different program streams. So another program stream would be public transit. So they determine with municipalities what projects hit my desk. The same on community culture and rec. We can't approve projects unless they're prioritized by the province. So that's why it is not only important that the federal government work with the province, but critically important that if you have projects that you believe should be prioritized under our infrastructure program, that you get the province to bring them to us. And so I work closely with the province of BC, but sometimes I will hear from projects that could be, say, from Port Coquitlam, and I don't see the projects because they don't end up being promoted by the government of BC. But this COVID stream is a huge opportunity, I think. It's, as I say, smaller projects that could go ahead. The idea is quickly. They can be retrofits. They can be active transportation. They can be repurposing or refitting because of the pandemic for schools, hospitals. So it's intended to be both focused on the COVID health situation, but also on the COVID economic and job situation.
Okay, so Pete and Michelle, I hope that helps. If not, drop a note in the Q&A there or send me a quick text and I can follow up on it. But it sounds like we need to talk to the province a little bit to get whatever project it is on the docket and over to the minister so it gets to her desk. So that's great. Where do I was actually on the webinar this morning with Globe talking about your net zero 2050. Where do you see infrastructure fitting into the whole climate change situation and your goal of net zero in 2050?
So infrastructure is critical. I mean, obviously there's different ways that you reduce your emissions. You can do regulatory ways, a price on pollution, but what you build either, as I say, either increases your emissions or reduces your emissions. It either makes your community more resilient or less resilient. And so the choices we make on infrastructure are going to be critically important. And that's why investments in things like public transportation and active transportation, retrofits of buildings, clean energy, all of the electrifying our transportation sector, all of these areas are critically important. And we're already investing in many of those areas, but I think that we are now doing a lot of the deep thinking on, okay, how do we link our long-term goals with the actual dollars we're spending to make sure they're aligned? And so that is something I do come with my former hat on as Minister of Environment and Climate Change, where I was always very keen to see how the dollars were being spent. So I will, continuously look at that, because not just because we need to tackle climate change, which of course we do, but that's really where the economic opportunities are. That also means cleaner air and cleaner water and a better quality of life. And so I think that there are huge opportunities. And one thing I am also thinking about, and there may be businesses that fit this, that we need to also procure locally clean solutions. There are a lot of smaller companies that we should be fostering, that as we build, we should be supporting these businesses so that they can grow and create even more jobs. These are the multiple benefits that you can get from infrastructure.
Okay. A local not-for-profit, one of the bigger ones here, is asking a question. It's fairly general, but so I'm not sure, but if any Tri-City organizations had applied previously and not successful, been advised that the program was oversubscribed, what would be needed for reconsideration of funding under the current funding round? Kind of general question, but I think
it may be related to the community and rec stream. I don't know. There are different, each province does things differently, and they have their own process for identifying projects in the different priority areas. So just in case people are wondering, under my portfolio with provinces, we focus on public transportation, green infrastructure. So that can be, often it's wastewater, or it can be renewable energy. It can be a whole range of things, retrofits, things that reduce emissions or good for the environment. The rural and northern stream, we also have, we have a number of other streams that are through other portfolios. And so once again, it depends on what the province is doing and, what their intake is. But I have heard in some cases the streams have been oversubscribed. And I think as we think about new programs, that is definitely going into our thinking, especially if they're shovel worthy. I like to say shovel worthy rather than ready. These are good projects that are going to achieve multiple goals, that we should look at how we, if there's through stimulus or through new programs that we're prioritizing that. So I know community culture and rec, huge interest. Also our disaster mitigation and adaptation stream, that there's been a lot of impacts of climate change in communities. So we need to be looking at how do we support communities adapt to the impacts of climate change. So I think that the best way, I think once again, first of all, go to the province. They are the ones, they have allocations and they give us lists. But you can also, to the extent that you have good projects, getting feedback that a stream's been oversubscribed and there are still projects there, I think is something that we can reflect on as we think about what are our new investments going to be.
Okay. Hope that helps you, Heidi. Just following up on that question from the city of Coquitlam, Pete's put in the comments there that needs to be all community. There are needs in all communities, and asked to try to spread the funds around to as many municipalities as possible, so that everybody shares in the wealth a little bit. So I
totally agree with that, and I think
benefits to as many as possible.
Yeah, I think that we need to make sure that happens. One thing we have started looking at as well is looking at where projects are going, and including there are I think inclusivity. We are all concerned about inclusivity and making sure that communities that don't have a lot of investments and really need them, making sure that they're getting a fair share too generally. So everyone getting a fair share, but also lower income, marginalized communities, though they really need those investments if people are going to be able to succeed.
So has the pandemic prompted a reassessment of your priorities for the projects, transit, energy, transportation, et cetera? Has it kind of refocused you a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I think in government you have to be flexible. So what I did is I said, okay, well, we aren't in the situation now, as I say, that we're doing stimulus, but what do we do with our existing program to adjust to COVID-19? And so that's the COVID stream that we have. We're also looking at where are the vulnerabilities? Because I think COVID-19 has really shown where we have vulnerabilities. I mean, they were always existing, but they are exacerbated. So a really good example would be high-speed broadband. We have huge challenges. And if you don't have access to high-speed broadband, it's a productivity issue. It's whether you can run your business. It's whether you can do calls, whether you can homeschool your kids. I don't know if anyone's in the same situation as me. I have 3 kids. It's an equity issue. So we know that we need to be much more ambitious and, make investments on that front. I think we've seen in social infrastructure some real challenges that have been exposed by COVID-19, affordable housing, where we see vulnerabilities for populations that are really at risk. So I think, look, if you're government, you don't have a choice but to react. And then I think we also need to think about, okay, within this, if we are going to restart our economy and really get it going, and we're going to invest dollars, where should we be investing those dollars? And that's what I'm spending a lot of time thinking about, and aligning not just with the short-term goals. There's always a lot of focus on immediate jobs. It's also the long-term goals that we need to focus on. And in fact, this economic situation is very different from the recession we saw in 08, 09. That the impact it's been on a lot of women. There's a gendered aspect that actually construction has been less hit than other sectors. So I think we need to also step back and really think about, what does this mean? Because it's not just good enough to say we're just going to throw some money around. You really need to be focused on how are you restarting the economy, addressing the major challenges, and then getting the growth and the investments that you need to build the long-term society that you want: cleaner, more competitive, more resilient.
One of the things that's come up out of the pandemic is just the need to do manufacturing more locally, bring it back from offshore, wherever that may be. Is there any thoughts given to incentivizing people to manufacture more locally? I know we've got a couple people in the Tri-Cities, and one in Coquitlam in particular, who pivoted very quickly to produce N95 masks, did a great job, and the supply is only selling them in Canada right now, which is great. But is there any thought to incentivizing people to bring that home?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a great point. Another example of how COVID-19 has shown vulnerabilities. We used to have just-in-time production where it would be all over the world, and look at now the supply chain. It's actually a complete risk to our health, to our economy. And I think, and thank you very much to whatever business stepped up, and we've had businesses across the country that have retooled, and that's been incredibly important because we needed PPE. And I think that is, it's a wake up, maybe a wake up message that we need to be looking at. How are we supporting Canadian businesses? And as I say, on my infrastructure program, we're thinking about that. How do we do more to make sure that we're actually not only creating jobs locally, but opportunities for business procurement? We're a huge procurer in government. And I know Minister Baines, Minister of Innovation, he's been very focused on this with a whole range of programs through COVID-19, but I think that's a reflection going forward. It's a resilient issue. It's also an economic opportunity too.
Absolutely. It was Nova Textiles, I think is the name of the company here, who stepped up, and we got it all done, and they pivoted very quickly, and they've been a great supporter provincially, so it's been great. You talked about telecommunications a little bit, and one of the questions asked is, can you explain new developments in telecommunications and breaking new communications? Where are we at on that? 5G, I guess, is a big thing coming up. It's here already in some parts, but what are we at in telecommunications?
Well, the good news is I'm not going to be making any announcements about what we're doing moving forward there. But look, I mean, as I said, high-speed broadband is critically important, and we have a challenge, and we talk about it being in rural and northern areas, but often that can be just right outside a city. And it's just so important. Even if we didn't have COVID-19, it would be critically important to be connected these days. And the good news by COVID-19, I think we've also seen how we can adapt. So you can deliver healthcare via, internet, to get to people that didn't have a family doctor or wouldn't have access. to a specialist. You can even do Parliament. I know Ron's probably delighted because he doesn't have to get on a plane all the time. So I think that there's a whole range of reasons we need to make sure that we're really focused on broadband and, you know, that sector. There's a lot more to be said. It's complicated because you have a whole range of players in that sector. It's regulated, and I think that we've been spending a fair bit of time as a government thinking about what we need to do to accelerate and improve connectivity. As I say, you need to do it anyway, but I think that COVID-19 has said like as fast as possible.
Okay. I see a question on here and one that was submitted earlier. So Jackie's really trying to get this in, talking about fish, and through the province of BC, of course, talking about fish-friendly infrastructure, be pumps when they're replacing the old ones through the water system. Was it something the federal government would mandate moving forward? Be a little more fish friendly when doing the upgrades on the flood systems.
So, I mean, I don't know that I can speak specifically to that, but I mean, if the general question is, can we do better when we do, you know, upgrades and investments? Absolutely. Like, we really need to be making sure that we're using the best practices and protecting the environment as much as possible. The last thing you want to do is do something that's good, like upgrading infrastructure, but having a negative environmental impact. And so that is incredibly important. You're also lucky you have the Minister of Environment from BC. So I know he cares greatly about this. He also understands the importance of fish to folks in BC. So something that we're happy, I know, Ron, we can follow up on this specific question.
Okay. And one of our local mayors from a smaller community in the Tri-Cities has asked, is there an available, is a list available of infrastructure projects that have been approved and declined?
Well, so our challenge, so the list in terms of approved, we actually have our website where it's got a map of all of the projects. So that is a handy tool. We don't know projects that are declined because, as I say, I only know what projects hit my desk. So it is really important to go to the government of BC. If you had a project that you were promoting and it didn't get approved, it means it wasn't, I mean, unless there was some problem with the project when it came to us, but generally it's because a decision was made, you know, not to prioritize the project. It could be that there was just a lot of competing projects, but I think that's where, as I say, the relationship with the government of BC is so critically important, because that's how we administer our infrastructure program in terms of my program, like the program through Infrastructure Canada. We do, I should say, there are two exceptions to that. Well, the main exception is under the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, which communities can apply to directly, but also we have the Green Municipal Fund under the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, where there's opportunities for communities to apply directly, and that's our funding. So that's government funding that we do. That's our tool for going directly to municipalities. Okay, but so I know how frustrating it can be, because I hear from folks when they're like, why didn't it get prioritized? And I actually just don't know.
So the key takeaway seems to be deal with the provincial level first, so it makes it to your desk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that loud and clear. That's good feedback. So looking through some of the other questions here, and again, folks, if you got questions, please feel free to type them in there. There's a lot of questions on flood management and such, and we think we touched on that one quite a bit. Is there anything else we want to touch on that? Outdoor recreation, flood controls keep coming back. We need to consider the fish stock here, but that's maybe Mr. Wilkinson. I think maybe he's more deal with that. Then is it an infrastructure issue?
I'm not sure. It may be a fisheries DFO, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, or environment, but we can follow. We're happy to follow up with the specifics on. I don't know how we make sure that we are that we're making sure that we protect the fish while we do infrastructure upgrades. I mean, I look on the flooding piece, that's a huge problem. That is the number one actually impact of climate change that people are feeling, and the cost is enormous, and it's going to continue. That's a sad thing. I mean, hopefully we will do what we need to do to stabilize the climate and tackle climate change, but flooding is a reality. That's through, we have a fund, disaster mitigation and adaptation fund. Huge interest in that. So we do need to replenish that fund. That's something I'm working on. I think that's really important. I mean, some other areas, to the extent people are interested, that were part of our platform, and we just haven't had a budget, as you know, because the COVID-19 hit, and our focus has really been what are the programs across the board that we can support people and support businesses. But we, an electric vehicle program, a large focus on, electric buses. Getting electric buses across Canada, 5,000 electric buses, that's really ambitious. Looking at natural infrastructure, how do you protect more nature? Tree planting, having a massive tree planting program, charging available for electric buses. So a lot of areas that I know that would be of interest, and that's still our the priority. It's just getting through the immediate pandemic it's been a huge job.
Yeah, on the bus issue there, one of the questions in the lower mainland of BC, which is ever growing and ever expanding beyond the reaches of our current SkyTrain system, what plans does the federal government have for partnering with BC to grow our green transportation to help people live in affordable communities? And maybe that's the electric bus issue you just talked about?
Well, I mean, I think that public transit more broadly, I know that there is I've really liked that I've seen in BC is that there's been a lot of coordination between different municipalities to actually figure out what is a coherent public transportation plan with different pieces to get people through the system. And I think that's really important. Because I mean, the last thing you want to do is go community by community and they don't link up, especially when people need to get, from one part of an area to the downtown core. We need to be doing that. So that's a focus. We have committed historic investments in public transit, and one of our commitments, which I know communities are very excited about, and once again, this is something that would need to go through the budget, but is permanent public transit funding, so that communities can know that there's permanent funding so that they can make longer term decisions. Because it's hard to just know you've got funding now, but you may not have funding in the future. And these are very long-term projects we're talking about, the big ones that you need to have certainty to be able to go ahead with them.
I think the pandemic might have shown the funding model for transportation. We rely on gas taxes is probably a little bit vulnerable as we go forward. So I think talking about a more permanent structure for funding for transportation would be great. One of the things Ron mentioned was the Pacific Gateway program and some work on some rail passes here, Ron, on Westwood and along the Lloyd Highway going into the Coquitlam First Nations. Ron, did you want to elaborate on that a little bit more, and we can talk about that?
Sure. These have been on the way for a number of years now. They're well into the design phase. They will be, the port and the railway and ourselves. We're working with the cities to do consultation to make sure that issues such as sound mitigation, noise mitigation, and so forth are dealt with. While I'm speaking, I'll just jump in here and speak a little bit about fish-friendly infrastructure as well. We are certainly working with Watershed Watch, who has an inventory of fish gates throughout the lower mainland, or throughout the lower Fraser Basin. And I know Finn Donnelly's on the call, and he's certainly continuing to advocate for the health of the basin and the whole Fraser River watercourse. So we will be taking up these issues with certainly yourself, Minister, as well as Minister. The Minister of Fisheries and so forth, because they are certainly crucial to the restoration of salmon habitat, as well as the mitigation of flood damage throughout the lower mainland. And I also like to join Mike in his shout out to Novo Textiles, they responded, they pivoted instantly on the advent of this crisis. They jumped in with both feet and committed to a whole new line of business, which is probably their business going forward. So kudos to those guys, and they are, they're an inspiration to us all on how to react to a crisis. So thank you.
Cool. Any other if there are any questions, please feel free to type them in there. We've got a few more minutes left to do this. When Ron, we talked about the Pacific Gateway program and the rail passes. One of them, ministers, you should know, is directly in front of the only entrance into the Coquitlam First Nation AR. It's reserve number 1. I think their main spot, their main headquarters. So if a train goes through there, and they could be long trains, they can be 10, 15 minutes. It's the only way in or out. There's an emergency, we got a problem. So what things is the government working on for the Aboriginal community to, and I'm thinking about the Coquitlam First Nations out here specifically, but in generally with the Aboriginal community to help them through this crisis?
So that's a great question, because it's been very challenging for Indigenous communities across the country, and a lot of them do not have the infrastructure that is needed to keep them safe, to be honest. So we have a number of ministers that are charged with that, working directly with them, whether it's funding or providing support. Many of the communities, I'm not sure, I don't know the situation in Coquitlam, but many of them have closed down or not allowing people to access them, which causes other challenges. So I think, look, on the short term, we need to do whatever we can to keep them safe. In the longer term, we need to make the critical infrastructure investments that ensure that everyone can succeed, and also give economic and job opportunities. So this is really cool. I'm just looking at this, I'm looking at something about a new bypass road, which is an example, the things that we are doing to provide access to communities, just trying to innovate in different spaces. And I think that's the piece is what I've learned working with Indigenous communities, every community is extremely different, and you need to be really listening to what are their needs and what are the opportunities to work together. And so we've been working hard on that, but I think we all recognize there's a lot more work to do.
Fantastic. Yeah, and from an infrastructure standpoint, I think this one single entrance into their headquarters, their main place where they do business and housing is limited. So we need to make sure during emergencies we can get people in and out of there. So I mean, I know Ron's alive to this whole issue and is working on it, but I just thought I'd bring that up and mention the Coquitlam First Nations because they are an integral part of our community here. So if you got any other questions, folks, feel free to type them in there. We've got about 5 or 10 minutes left and we can get to your questions. I'm not sure what else we got here.
I'll just jump in if I may and talk a little bit more about the the Pacific Gateway project. So certainly, as Mike mentioned, for the Coquitlam First Nation, it is clearly a safety issue. When there's a train blocking their access, there is they can't get in with fire equipment or emergency equipment such as ambulances, and so we're certainly aware and alive to that and working on that. The railway is certainly cognizant of that. But this also has consequences. The other 3 crossings in our region, in our Tri-Cities areas, are very important for helping to move freight through the community without causing traffic bottlenecks, which have consequences in terms of emissions, have consequences in terms of just the way of life of us all. And it also interferes with the ability of the railway to build trains. Because they have only limited space in which to work, and if they make too long trains, they block traffic and so forth. So we're certainly continuing to put our energy into supporting these projects. I meet with the port on a regular basis, and I also meet by times with the railroad representatives, and everybody is keen to make this happen, and we're happy to support it. And certainly going forward, I think we're at a stage now where we will be working with the cities in particular to make sure that their concerns such as ongoing maintenance, ongoing ownership, and noise mitigation are very well looked after. So anyway, but I understand it's not necessarily an infrastructure. There are many different places where this funding could land. But thank you.
Yeah, for the movement of goods throughout the community, throughout the Lower Mainland, it's important to keep the economy going. So it serves a lot of benefits to get those projects done. Minister, a question that came in here is fairly wide open, but what do you see as the best green priority, i.e. fuel cell technology? What do you see as the best green priority?
Look, it's all hands on deck. When I look at, I come to where I just look at where are the emissions coming from. They're coming from the transportation sector. They're coming from our built environment, our buildings, our homes. They're coming from our energy sector. They're coming from industry. So really, you need a whole range of solutions. And I think that sometimes is the challenge. And I'm a little bit, I'm not agnostic, but I think that sometimes we get caught up, here's the big answer to this. I think that it's got to be what's going to get us the emission reductions and what makes economic sense and where there are opportunities for Canada as well. So look, I think fuel cell technology is important. I think, batteries, electric batteries, generally, I think that there's low cost solutions like energy efficiency and retrofitting homes and buildings, which we are going to be focusing on. I think that BC is lucky. It has a lot of clean power, a lot of hydro, and we need to make sure that we're able to get that. Other provinces are still on coal. So there's a whole range of things. I could bore you to death about things, but I get excited because I see a huge number of Canadian solutions, even in my portfolio for infrastructure. So cross-laminated timber is now, we're doing tall wood buildings with timber made, this cross-laminated timber out of BC, out of Quebec. I was in California before COVID hit. I was in San Francisco in January, and it was amazing seeing this beautiful building being built with cross-laminated timber. It's quite perplexingly from Quebec, not BC. I don't know why, but that's an example. We now have low carbon concrete, Canadian-made low carbon concrete being used around the world. We have like zero carbon aluminum that we're making. So I think it's a whole range of solutions, and BC has been great. BC and Quebec are really the clean tech hubs of Canada, coming up with a whole range of great solutions. And I think that's really the opportunity. I mean, sometimes we get stuck in the negative part of climate change. Clean economy is a massive opportunity. And so my focus is like, how do we make sure that not only we're reducing our emissions, but we're looking at what are the Canadian opportunities and the Canadian solutions, and how do we help these companies scale so they can provide these solutions to the countries around the world that I've been to that need these solutions.
Do you find your priorities align with the provincial government's priorities?
Do you mean your government or provinces?
Well, let's take BC.
That's a complicated question. I would like to think we always align. We don't always align. I think that, look, I think we have a good relationship, including with British Columbia. There's always going to be challenges to any relationship. I think if everyone just keeps their eye on the ball and recognizes what are the key priorities and things we're wanting to do, create jobs, grow the economy, build a cleaner future, build a more inclusive society, we can, get real outcomes. And also, I spent a lot of time knocking on doors. I had to knock on more than 100,000 doors to win my riding. I do know, one thing I know for sure is most people, when you go to their door, they're not spending a lot of time saying, oh yeah, you're responsible for this, and the city is responsible for this, the province is responsible for this. They just want the good things done. And so I think it's incumbent on politicians to figure out how to work together. And going back to the breaking news, I think it's very positive that we were able to get the Safe Restart Agreement that with provinces that will support municipalities, that will ensure that we have PPE, will ensure that we have better childcare and a whole range of things that we need to be doing. So we will continue working together. No doubt there will be discussions with provinces about priorities, but at the end, we all are responsible to deliver and support our communities. So and Canadians. So that's what I'm, a practical person.
Okay, fantastic. Couple more questions here real quick, and former MP Finn Donnelly's asked a question, and we know we're Finn's passion.
Hello, Finn Donnelly. Hello, we miss you.
So Finn's asking, will the minister commit to working with the province on watershed security investment in the short term, COVID-19 recovery, jobs for women, youth, and First Nations, and long-term investments in prosperity, i.e. 2-for-1 matching dollars for long-term projects.
Well, I'm not going to commit to exactly that right now. I am committed. I think those are very good ideas, Finn. Finn does reach out to me, and we have good conversations. Look, I think that there are some real opportunities, and I know we've had good discussions about watersheds, and you know, how we move forward to you know, in the longer term in a whole range of areas. So happy for him. Yeah, I'm sure he will send me an email with like the very detailed areas that he likes support.
He'll get you out all in detail for sure.
Ask him if he's swimming. That's all I want to know. Is he actually doing his swimming?
Post something in the chat there or in the Q&A, Finn. Community Culture and Recreation Fund. Can you tell us a little bit more about the process and how our communities, there's 5 different communities here, can benefit from this program?
Well, I mean, I think like the intent of this fund is to support communities in you know, the culture and in culture and recreation. And I mean, look, we've all spent a lot of time in our communities. I think we can agree that having places where kids can go, seniors can go, after school programs, arts programs, a whole range of opportunities is really where culture and community and arts can grow is really important. And so that's the intent of that program, is to build new centers, to support upgrades of aging facilities or make them more energy efficient. Once again, and I hate to sound like a broken record, it is really, we have that is a priority. This is an area where there's money allocated to BC, but it is important to be working with the government of BC to prioritize those projects. And I agree, these should be projects across the province.
Okay, so again, work with our local MLAs to get our projects approved and up the ladder onto your desk. I think we're about right at the end here, so I'm going to ask Minister McKenna for any closing comments. Thank you so much for all your time. And any closing comments as we get to the end of the time here?
Well, I mean, I think one, just thanks to everyone. Thanks for this session. I really appreciate it, Mike and Ron for setting this up. And a shout out to Ron, because I know how hard he's working in your community, and also to all the members of the chamber. And a broader thank you, because this is a really hard time. And if you look at other places, I mean, we could just look south of the border, things maybe aren't going as well. And I think it's a real credit to Canadians. And I really mean this, across partisan lines, across industry, across sectors, that we're all working together, and we will get through this. I mean, it's not over, that is 100% for sure, and it's gonna be tough, but I think we can come through this stronger. And these conversations are really important because, one, I wanna be available and accessible so people know that we're actually doing things, but it's also important to hear from you and your community about what the priorities are, because that's how we're going to get better outcomes. So let's just keep it up. Keep on working with Ron. He's great. We'll not only get through this, I think we'll get through this stronger, and we'll make investments that are also going to set us up well for the long term. And gosh, I mean, we all owe it to our kids to tackle climate change. And we can do it at the same time while creating good jobs and opportunities for people. So that is something that I will continue working on, and I'll continue working with you folks on. So thanks for that. Hopefully I get to see you in person someday.
I hope you can make it out here. We'd love to have you out here. Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I'll make a couple closing comments. Mr. McKinnon.
Well, thanks, Mike. And thank you, Minister, for taking the time today to have a conversation with us about the real infrastructure needs in the Tri-Cities, and of course, all the trials and tribulations that attend that. It was great to welcome you back to our community. I know you've been here before. It continues to be the best community in Canada. And I can't wait for the day that you can visit us in person once more. And so also a big thank you to Mike Hind and the entire Chamber staff for facilitating this event. And also a shout out to my staff and the minister's staff for working so diligently and with Mike and the Chamber to make it happen. So thank you everyone for joining us. And with that, I hope everyone stays safe and healthy and enjoys the summer weather, and good afternoon to everyone.
Yeah, and quick closing comments. Thank you, everybody. And again, I echo that. The staff has been great. Everybody working together. Mr. McKenna, we'd love to have you come on out anytime you can. We'd love to host you out here. And I echo, we will get through this. We will come out of it the other side different, but stronger. I'd like to see more manufacturing done in Canada. Keep the border closed for now because we're doing a pretty good job out here in BC and keeping our numbers down. And we're very proud of that, but working together, I think we'll all get through this and be stronger and be better. Thanks for all the work the government's doing. I know there's a lot of programs and a lot of information coming out and a lot of work. And I do want to thank the civil service, because I know every time I've come on this, and the civil service has done a great job of politicians make decisions and then they got to implement it, and they got to probably turn around billion-dollar programs in a week where normally it would take 6 months. So thanks to all the hardworking civil service. It's not perfect. None of it's perfect, and we're adjusting and adapting. And I found the government's been very good at taking feedback. I'm on calls 3 days a week with some people back in Ottawa, and they've taken the feedback and trying to make it better. Working together, we will all get through this. Thank you very much for everybody. If you got any comments for the Chamber, feel free to call me in the office or email us. We're here to help you and here to help everybody in the community get stronger and get better. Have a great day and a great week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. See y'all.
Bye.
Bye. We never found out if Finn swims. Let's hope he's swimming.
And he'll let you know.
He'll let me. I'm sure he will. With his list. Anyway.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, Ron.
Ron, maybe
Thanks.
just stay on a second.
Sure, you bet. Thanks, Catherine. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you, Ron. Well, hopefully in person. You coming in town?